Hi. Well, it's still April or May 9th, and I put that video up here just a little bit on Benghazi is the revealer of lies, and I've gotten a lot of questions about that. Phone calls from friends, all kinds of things. And I forget that I have a lot of people looking at this channel now that haven't been following me from the beginning. Again, it was something I didn't anticipate. So actually I've been talking about Benghazi, not right after it happened, but some certain things with General Petraeus and onward that basically showed us what was going on there. And I have commented on that in past videos, but let me bring you up to date for those who don't know. And this is a real short brief, I hope, but I think you'll get the idea. I'm going to tie it into Pat Tillman. Do you remember Pat Tillman, the NFL football star who enlisted in the Army? He was a Ranger, and he went over to Iraq and Afghanistan. I know for Afghanistan for sure because that's where he was killed. A lot of strange things about that. If you go in and look at the family's explanation, it's called the Pat Tillman story, I believe. You'll be able to get some first-hand information, and not just from me. But I'll give you the background on this much. Pat went in and he was the poster boy for the war. And then when he got there, he realized all these bad things were going on. The drug dealing by the CIA, the poppy fields that they were guarding, all of that, okay? Supplying Al-Qaeda, giving the Taliban the money to go to Pakistan. He got involved in a lot of things that he probably knew about. He started writing home. And as a result of that, they got upset at him. And on one of the missions, there was a bomb in the middle of the convoy, and his vehicle and another, I believe, two, it may have only been one Humvee, it could have been two, were separated from the main column. And in that time period, Tillman and his buddy got out and took a secured position. At any rate, after the other vehicles got around the bomb, one did, it came up and started firing on Pat Tillman, and Pat Tillman was waving, and this is what we get from his buddy who survived. Hey, I'm Pat Tillman, don't shoot. And of course, he's in an Army uniform and all that. They shot him from about 50 yards away, I understand, or it may have been as close as 50 feet, and then came up and executed him by shooting him in the head. Now that's the story that I understand from the family's explanation of what happened. Okay, the generals all covered up and said no, he was charging an enemy machine gun nest and was shot in that situation, which was a lie. He did not say, or he did not have that happen to him. He was actually executed. Was it friendly fire? Not at that range, not under those circumstances. And what's most important here, and I'm going to just tell you, there are CIA embeds in the military, and they carry out certain things. And I think that Pat Tillman had become a liability because of what he was willing to say about the war. He would no longer be the war's poster child, the government's poster child, and they had to get rid of him because he was too well known. CIA embeds assassinated him. Okay, why do I bring Pat Tillman up? Because I think the same thing happened to our ambassador, Andrews. Remember what I said just in this last video about the fact that the government has supplied, and I've been saying this all along, okay? All along I've been telling you that the government supplies Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is an arm of the CIA and other Western intelligence agencies for the military-industrial complex to foment wars, dissent, so that they can continue spending money, getting power, those kinds of things, okay? I've also explained that there's a war. I haven't gone into great detail on this because I really don't want to shake anybody up at this point, but there is an internal war going on in our government, okay? That's why you've seen so many good generals relieved, okay, or leave the military, and some other things that have happened. But Benghazi was a really important thing, and General Petraeus is tied into it. The General Petraeus had left the military and had gone into the CIA. He was the CIA director during this time period of Benghazi. If you remember, he was caught up in a sex scandal, right? All right. Well, men are men, okay? His mistake was, in my view, would be that he was with another married woman. You know, if she hadn't been married, it would have been a whole other ball game for me. But as far as the military was concerned, that was still a bad deal. Okay. There were people on the inside that did not want the military to have control over the civilian side of the CIA. Petraeus was a threat. Why, knowing that, did Obama put him in there? I think because they knew they were going to take him down long before Benghazi happened. But when Benghazi occurred, this was the situation. The government was giving arms to Al-Qaeda in the Libyan overthrow. We never got a declaration of war in Libya. What did they call it? A kinetic action? You know, American people, we need to understand that we've been deceived and lied to constantly. And Libya is another good example. Libya was actually a secular government that was actually doing pretty well. Same thing with Syria, okay? Why are we taking secular, well-balanced governments? Yeah, and I'm not saying they're perfect, but things are improving under those organizations, those nations, and then all of a sudden we put these lunatics in to do the things that they do. Why? It's not a mistake, like I've said before. It's absolutely on purpose to cause more dissidents, more trouble, so they can have continual wars. So, Ambassador Stevens was in the consulate in Benghazi. It's not even an embassy. He's not even supposed to be there, okay? That's one of the problems. It's an illegal place to have embassy activity. If you know anything about embassy, rules and all that. The CIA compound next door was a torture chamber where they would get people in and torture them, okay? Now, it is true that there were SEALs there and people that were protecting the contingent, okay? Good people, okay? Good people. And what occurred is that Stevens started to complain about what these arms were doing. They were given into the hands of the Libyan Al-Qaeda, okay, for transfer to the Syrian Al-Qaeda. And I think he started to probably kick against the pricks, so to speak. He said, wait a minute, what are we doing here? He was meeting with the Turkish ambassador, I think, or the prime minister, somebody like that. Anyway, several times there in Benghazi. So the point is this whole thing revolves around what he knew, when he knew it, and possibly his disagreement with the policy, okay? And there are indications that that was going on. Now, you remember the whole Benghazi thing. Supposedly the State Department and the president and all these people said, oh, it was because of that anti-Muslim video, anti-Muhammad video. No, it was not. Okay, now that's come out. But we were saying that at the time that was not true, okay? I went on record with that, and so did a lot of other people that watch this thing, who have been around these types of things. It was a hit. This was a well-organized, armed assault on the consulate and on those compounds that were around there with the express purpose of killing our ambassador and his entourage. Okay, that's what it was about. Okay, to silence him and to make sure that those weapons were transferred to Syria. So why did I include Pat Tillman in the story? Because our ambassador was a victim of this same cabal, this wicked group, and actually they're fighting for power now. So that's why I keep saying that we're in a very dangerous position now, because all these people have nothing to lose. So, everything's out in the open. So that's kind of what I was talking about. Maybe that'll make some sense to you. I'll try to do a more detailed explanation later. I always say that and I never do it. But I think you get the idea of what's going on now. There's a lot more to it than that. The cover up, the fact that Hillary Clinton, along with, and I might say this real quick too, because this is important, SEAL Team 6, gee, a lot of them were killed in that helicopter crash in Afghanistan. Isn't that a little odd? Nobody to talk about it, and I talked about that before. The commander of SEAL Team 4 supposedly committed suicide. In fact, that didn't happen. Okay, and Hillary Clinton's little problem with her head, she didn't get that concussion by falling down. Another thing happened altogether. I won't go into that, but they were someplace where maybe they shouldn't have been. I'm going to hold this off for just a minute while this vehicle leaves here, and then I'll get started again. Well, it looks like it's going to be quiet. All right, well, that's a real quick rundown on the Benghazi thing. There's more to it than that, but that's kind of the nuts and bolts, okay? Where did Petraeus get in there? Well, obviously, Petraeus was out of the loop. They didn't let him know, and he was in a really bad situation, and he was going to be scheduled to testify in Benghazi. What do you do when somebody's going to testify? You try to give them a black eye, give them something so that they can't really say what they want to say. He realized at that point that he was surrounded by enemies. He was not just the director of the CIA. He was the enemy of the CIA. Sad. So that's the reason why that happened to him. More to it than that, but that's kind of, like I say, the bottom line. I want to switch off from there for a minute. And now that I've got your attention, I want to talk about a couple other things. And we'll talk about this Benghazi thing more as it comes out. They're not going to tell you the whole story, all right? They're just not going to do that. They're going to do it behind closed doors, invoke national security. You already know about the one, guy that was going to testify, and his lawyer needs to have, a top secret clearance. You know about how they stall and all that. This thing, hopefully, our congressmen and our senators will get to the bottom of this. I hope, but their track record isn't very good, folks. All right, for doing this. Fast and Furious, they did nothing. The birth certificate, they did nothing, and lots of other things. So we'll see. Like I say, there's this war inside the government, and I'm going to cover that in a lot more depth here one day. But that was also what was going on in the Boston bombing. And I'll just stop right there. I'm not going to go any further. Okay. All right. Go to express.co.uk. Okay, this is a newspaper in the United Kingdom. And it talks about, I saw this and I couldn't believe it, a barrister there is calling for a law that will exempt old men from having sexual affairs with young women age 13. In other words, they want to lower the age of consent to 13 to protect people like Jimmy Savile and probably other people on up the line. Remember I said pedophilia is part of these, it's a ritual of the religion of these evil people, from Bohemian Grove all the way over to Transylvania, okay? It's all connected, and these people are ruling the roost. Okay, let me see if I need to bring anything else up here. Maybe not. Maybe that's where I'll stop right now, other than to say this, and I'm just going to speak to those guys out there who just keep digging, or at least say they are, looking for my military records or the absence of them. I don't even really want to address this, but I'm going to just real quick. I'm here to try to open up the eyes of the American people so they can have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All right? My word is my bond. Now, you don't have to take me for face value, but what I am concerned about, you guys who keep digging on me, is this, okay? If you would expend a fraction of the energy you're trying to hang me with, which you're not going to succeed in. Yeah, of course I was younger, and like I said, men love women and all that. I'm not hiding anything. It's all on my website. That's not the point. The point is that we're in trouble in this country, and we need people to stand up for it. And you guys would be, except, I'm afraid that this thing, like I said, is too pervasive, but why don't you guys spend a fraction of this energy, okay? And go look for the real criminals. What the president's done, what the senators, the congressmen do, what your senior generals have done around the world, about the money they get paid on the side. All of that. Why don't you spend your time and energy going after people that are really the problem instead of somebody like me? First of all, because you're wasting your time. And second of all, because I'm here trying to wake people up so that they will have the promises of this great land and our great Constitution. Okay, I'm just going to say that again. Okay, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, but man, here I am discussing issues, and all you guys can do is name call, all right? Why don't you get involved in the dialogue? No, I'm never going to talk to you, okay? Talk to other people on the site. You can listen to me, you can take it or leave it, all right? But go after the bad guys, okay? They're the bad guys, not somebody like me who's trying to uncover the corruption, all right? And I have a history of uncovering corruption. You guys have no idea. All right, enough of that. Sorry about the little bit of echo here. I'm sorry about the real quick follow-up on that last video, but I did have a lot of people asking me questions. Yeah, this is a big deal. This is a big deal. I'm hoping this whole Benghazi thing splits the government corruption and secrets wide open that have nothing to do with national security, but criminal conduct. Okay? I'm hoping that's what happened. I feel bad for General Petraeus. He walked into a trap, but it was indicative of what these people are capable of, and like I said, if I think her name was Brawford, I'm sorry, if she hadn't been married, I wouldn't have cared either. All right, but that was my only beef with that situation with the two of them. She was a honeypot. Looks that way. Looks that way. So was that other lady in Florida, Kelly, I think was her last name. She had been in the White House a little too often. This was a setup. All right, and it has to do with Benghazi as well. They got him in there so they could control him. They were afraid they couldn't. They burned him. Okay, real easy. That's what they do. A lot more to it than that, but I think that'll give you the basics. All right. Hey, thanks, guys. Yeah, share this with everybody. I think this is an important one. It shows the criminality in our government, and that we can't trust them anymore to do anything. We need to fire them all. I don't care who they are. Fire them all and get regular people in there who know nothing about, attorneys and about, all this nonsense, millions and millions and billions of dollars that they have. Institute the proper ethical procedures, which they vote out all the time. They can do things that are not. If we did the things they did, we'd be criminals. Okay, but they exempt themselves. That's a title of nobility. That's illegal. Okay. A lot this time. All right. I wasn't actually planning on doing this. I only did it because so many people had so many questions. But I think that'll give you a basic nuts and bolts of what happened. Our brave SEALs and our ambassador and others died over there because there are wicked people in our government who will do wrong things and not fess up to it, to put you in slavery and to kill off your posterity. That's really where it's going. Okay? All right. Have a good day.